My name is Menna Zekrallah. I represent the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development today. I cover the manufacturing sector, and fertilizers is obviously part of the manufacturing and our manufacturing efforts. I hope the presentation works. The small one. Okay, thank you. So my plan today is to introduce the bank, what it is, with a bit of focus on the efforts that we are doing with the IFA and the IEA as well, and introduce a bit the roadmap and how does that fit with the overall working that we do with the bank. So the EBRD is short for European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The bank was established in 1991 and it is owned by 67 countries, the EU and the EIB. The bank operates in 34 or 36 countries now, those that are marked on the map. This is basically the map of our world. In our Arab region, it works in Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, Tunisia, recently as well in Lebanon, West Bank and Gaza. So the bank has a very solid financial base. We have a capital of 30 billion euros. We have a portfolio of 41 billion euros as well in all the countries where we operate. We have been operating in Egypt and the Samad region, we call it, since 2014. Our annual business investments that we do is around 10 billion euro, which we've done in 2019. Our key principles and founding principles is sound banking. So every project we invest in needs to make financial and economic sense. Transition impact as well as environmental sustainability. Those are the founding principles of what we offer really in the bank. So we work directly with manufacturers like yourselves by providing them long-term financing. That could be in local currencies or in the major currencies, dollar, euros, and we also do minority equity participations. We mobilize additional funding from other resources that we have access to. And we also work quite often indirectly with local banks and local commercial institutions to reach the small and companies and SMEs. But our financing is quite often linked also to a technical component, which is the green at the bottom here, technical assistance. The technical assistance is quite often geared to reduce the energy or the resource consumption, or to educate potentially companies of how to do things in a more efficient way, in one way or the other. Or also one other option is to structure support in a way of how to manage your energy consumption or how to manage your resources more efficiently. On the policy dialogue part, which is then the light blue part, is because we operate and we work in those countries. We work with the private sector, but we also work with governments. So we have open dialogue with the governments and quite often have an opinion that we say, or we can really voice the opinions of the manufacturers to the government, and that helps in shaping certain policies and certain regulations. So we work together with the private sector as well as with the government and the legislators to make sure that it works for the best of both, and eventually as well for the best of our sustainable environment. The last bit, which I kept for last, is concessional co-financing. So concessional co-financing means that we, for certain purposes of finances, financing, we can offer loans that are cheaper than what you would get from commercial lenders. We do this because we have access to grants and we have access to other soft money and concessional financing that we blend with our normal commercial-based financing so that the project ends up being more economically competitive for the borrower. I will zoom in as well more on this point later. So in 2015, we have launched what we called a green economy transition. We call it in short GET. So the purpose really of this GET is that we want to, or we decided that 40% of our annual investments that we do should be GET eligible or green. Because we think that the environment and focusing on sustainable development is very important. We pledge that about 4 billion of our investments will be green. Since 2006 until today, we have done 29 billion investments that will get eligible, and we saved, or those investments saved 97 million tons of CO2 emissions. Just to put things in perspective, this cumulative savings of CO2 emissions is like the annual emission from a country like Belgium, for instance, or Nigeria. So it is quite substantial. Our green transition focuses on the manufacturing sector. And we as EBRD, we invested, for instance, last year in the manufacturing sector, 934 million euros across the countries where we operate. This has been in 65 transactions. In the agribusiness sector as well, we've invested similar numbers. And in our region, we call it SEMED, which is Jordan, Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt. We have invested in 2019 1.8 billion euros across 55 projects. So how do we do our concessional financing? So we have countries that are basically eligible, and we are fortunate to be part of those countries, our region being Egypt and Morocco, Tunisia. There's also Kazakhstan, Turkey, and Ukraine. All of the countries listed there benefit from the mobilized grants that we have. And the purpose really is that we want to see, or we want to promote an increase of investments and technologies that have high climate impact. And also to instill behavioral changes in our dialogues with manufacturers like yourselves so that their strategies are more aligned to a more green and sustainable environment. This concessional financing, we call them high impact loans, and basically they promote the installation of certain advanced technologies that can help the reduction of the CO2 emissions and as well improve the governance and the measurement of the emissions and the environmental impact of the producers. So we collaborated with both the IFA and the IAA, and our objective has been that we want to identify specific and realistic investments that we as EBRD can support, so to achieve ultimately, or to facilitate really the achievement of the roadmap. An example that we've done in another industry in Egypt has been our roadmap for low carbon emission for the cement industry. So in that example, we have collaborated with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, as well as the local cement association, and this is an association of all the cement manufacturers in Egypt, and we So this is the private sector. On the other hand, we have collaborated with the Ministry of Industry and Trade as well as the Ministry of Environment to set certain goals on how to reduce the CO2 emissions until 2030. So we've tried to bridge, we as EBRD, our role has been to try to bridge what the producers think they can achieve and what the government really wants to achieve to be fully aligned with the Paris Agreement. So we still continue to work on the implementation of the roadmap, and we continue our dialogue. And in that sense, we want to also help in launching the efforts and supporting them for the fertilizers industry as well. So I'm not going to speak much about what is the roadmap, because I think here the colleagues have covered them in full. But basically what we can offer is green financing, and financing for those green investments that potentially the manufacturers will need to do in order for them to be fully aligned with the goals of the roadmap. This is again why I would like to reiterate the importance of your participation in setting what is the roadmap and making sure that it suits you as manufacturers, that you potentially can be aligned with that roadmap so that it makes sense for you as well. And we'd be happy to consider investing potential capex that you might need to do to be fully aligned with that. I think the work that has been done has been developed over an 18-month period, again with the IEA and with the help of the IFA. The objective has been already laid out with, by the colleagues, is that to achieve reduction or a low carbon footprint for the industry by 2050. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm available for questions if there is any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Menna. If you have any question about the nitrogen technology roadmap, we will be more than happy, either Lucia, Menna, myself, to take your questions. Yes, please. You have a question over there?
يعطيكم العافية جميعا. يعني شكر موصول للبنك الأوروبي وللIEA وجميع المنظمات اللي بتشتغل. إذا في ترجمة طبعا حدا عايز ترجمة بس بنتظر. واضح الأمور، أنا بحكي بالعربي نعم. فهذا العمل عمل يعني جدا رائع للبشرية، أن نصل إلى نظافة في البيئة. طبعا أنا يعني فعلا أطالب بأنه يدخل عنصر آخر في موضوع النيتروجين. النيتروجين يصنع طبعا في المصانع ويستعمل في المزارع. الذي يستعمل هذا النيتروجين هو لإنتاج المحاصيل الزراعية. لابد من توظيف البحث العلمي نحو النيتروجين. أصلا يصنع بطريقتين، إما أنه يصنع داخل التربة بواسطة الميكروبيال اكتيفيتي وبواسطة الكائنات في التربة وتثبيت النيتروجين الجوي، وإما يصنع في المصانع الكبيرة التي تستهلك وتبصم الكربون في الأجواء. فاليوم احنا بحاجة لتعزيز البحث العلمي الذي يقود إلى الإنتاج الزراعي بدون نيتروجين يضاف من الخارج، وإنما أن يكون النيتروجين في التربة قابل للاستفادة. وهذا الكلام راح يقلل من استخدام النيتروجين المصنع بطرق كربونية أو بطرق أخرى. الآن أنا عندي تجارب كثيرة أن استخدام صفر نيتروجين في كل المحاصيل البقولية يؤدي إلى إنتاج أفضل من استخدام النيتروجين. هذه الأبحاث بحاجة إلى دعم، وبحاجة أن تكون مساق في خارطة الطريق التي تطرحونها. محصول صويا بين، أنا في البرازيل اطلعت على مجموعة كبيرة من المنتجين كله ينتج بصفر نيتروجين. اليوم استخدام النيتروجين الصناعي في الترب يؤدي إلى قتل قدرة التربة وقدرة النبات على الإنتاج النيتروجيني من نيتروجين التربة ومن الهواء الموجود في التربة. هذا الكلام بحاجة إلى توضيح وتوعية وأبحاث، لأنه إحنا إذا ذهبنا إلى إنتاج زراعي كبير بأقل كميات ممكن من النيتروجين فإحنا بنساهم في الوصول للهدف تبع خارطة الطريق. طبعا احنا بالاردن، انا ممثل غرفه صناعه الاردن للصناعات الكيماويه، بنرحب بهالمبادرات انه نقدر نستفيد كصناعه اردنيه من البنك الاوروبي، وموجود عندنا البنك الاوروبي بموضوع توظيف الطاقه النظيفه في الصناعه وصناعه الاسمده. في عندنا مجموعه كبيره من المصانع، وان شاء الله بكون تنسيق بيناتنا بهذا الموضوع. وشكرا.
شكرا لك أخي العزيز على السؤال وعلى المداخلة القيمة. أولا مثل ما تفضلت، المشروع ليس فقط حصر على الIEA والIFA والERBD، ولكن كذلك هناك أطراف كثيرة أخرى داخلة في هذا الموضوع، أهمها يمكن يكون الفلاحين والجامعات. فنأخذ في عين الاعتبار هذه المشاركة من جميع الأطراف ذات العلاقة المباشرة والغير مباشرة لإعداد خارطة الطريق. النقطة الثانية اللي حبيت أوضحها، نحن اليوم في صدد إعداد داتابيس ما أعرف شو يسمونه بالعربي، قاعدة بيانات لجميع التقنيات والتكنولوجيات القائمة حاليا والتي هي قيد البحث، التي قد تؤثر على صناعتنا، كانت إلى إنتاج النيتروجين مباشرة في التربة أو غيرها. فنعمل حصر لجميع هذه التقنيات وندرسها، وندرس ما هو الممكن تنفيذها لنا كمصنعين، لأنها بيعود تأثيرها مباشرة علينا. فالنقاط التي ذكرتها سعادتك في عين الاعتبار، وراح ناخذها في أثناء مداخلتنا وفي أثناء مباحثاتنا مع الIEA من أجل ضمان عدم تجاهل أو تغاضي عن دور الهام للريسيرش اند ديفلوبمنت. فنقطتك جدا مهمة، وإذا كانت الأخت منا عندها أي شيء تضيفه للاستثمارات ممكن تتفضل. شكرا. Any other question? Any other comment? If nobody else have any, I would like you all to thank Lucia, Menna, Ashok and Fred for excellent presentation. Thank you very much. We'll break now for tea break, I think.